God in your life will show you some really great things. He's going to show you some great things. As a matter of fact, He is going to show you at some point in time how good you've got it. How good you've got it. And it may just be that God has to put you in a situation where you look back and say, man, I had it made. You ever got that? You look back at how it was, and then you say to yourself, wow, back there, I really had it made. When I look back now and I say, when I was living at home with my parents, I had it made because my mom was a good cook. The air conditioner always ran in the summertime. The wood heater was always going in the winter. There was always food of some sort. Everything was taken care of. Man, I remember I had it the best when I had vehicular motion. I had a four-wheeler or a truck or whatever. I could go out and do whatever I wanted to all day long, and I could get home and I could hit the pillow. I could hit the sack. And guess what? My parents didn't ask me to pay for not one bill that came in the mail. They didn't say, this one's yours. They didn't. They just let me live there. And I look back, and now you know what happens every month? The bills come in, and guess whose name's on them? Mine. I look back and say, man, I've got it made. I look back and I say, I had it made, and now I'm paying the piper. You get that? By the sweat of thy brow thou shalt eat of it. That's what you say every day when you go to work. And so, Paul is the same way. He's now locked in prison. At one time, he got to have Bible class every day. At one time, he got to sit with friends and fellowship. And they just didn't have a little Bible class. You know what they did? They worked hard all day long, and they made money. Whatever they did, they scattered. Paul built tents. He did whatever it was. Lydia, she went out and dyed clothing and sold. She sold cloth. The men, they went out and made her. At night, when everybody got through making their money, you know what happened? They got together for a big potluck. In other words, they had dinner together. They would have a fellowship meal almost every night. They called it a love feast many times, where they ate together. And you know what else they did? After they ate? Bible class. And I'm not talking about any little 30-minute devotional. They had Bible class, until they couldn't stand it. And you hear about Bible class that Paul had before. There was a young man sitting in a window in a building, and Paul went on. He was teaching. He went on into the night, it says. On into the night. And if I kept you here 30 minutes past time, you'd be like back there just, whew, I wonder when he's going to quit. Paul went on into the night so that the young man fell asleep in the windowsill. He just couldn't stand it anymore. He fell asleep. And he fell out backwards. Hit the ground, broke his neck, dead. Died in Bible class. And Paul went down and he laid on the young man and he prayed, and the young man was healed and came back to life. And guess what? They went back to Bible class. And he kept going. Well, Paul now no longer gets to enjoy Bible class. And he is going to look back and he is going to cherish the memories that he had at Philippi with the brethren in Bible class. I'm going to go to our passage now and read verse 8, and then we're going to come back and look at one phrase at a time. In verse 8, for God is my witness, Paul says, how greatly I long for you all with the affection of Jesus Christ. And so Paul is recollecting their time together, their fellowship, and how great it was. We know that Paul got thrown in prison. Do you know he did something bad to get thrown in prison? He accepted a legalistic vow that was pushed on him by religion. And, we have the same thing nowadays. Well, if you come to my church and you want to get back in, and you've been out for a while, what you need to do at the end of the service is you need to walk the aisle for rededication. That's what they say. And they're going to sing 16 verses of Just As I Am at the end. And when you get up, make sure you're dressed, make sure your skirt's pulled down, make sure you don't have runner in your hose, because everybody's going to be looking at you. You got that? In other words, you got to jump through a psychological hoop to get back in for church. You're going to walk down the aisle, you're going to stand in front of everybody. And the pastor's going to put his arm around you, and he's going to say, so-and-so's been out of the loop for a while, but now they want to rededicate. You know what they're rededicating? The old man, the flesh. There's nothing spiritual about it. The Bible does not mention rededication one time. You know what it does mention? 1 John 1:9. If we confess our sins, He is faithful and just to forgive us and cleanse us of all unrighteousness. And so we see the grace mechanics here. Well, Paul, in verse 8, he says, "For God is my witness." The first phrase is, Martus gar mu hotheos. The word martus means witness. And you know the word martyr is someone who was killed. And many times it's used for people who are killed for their faith. And here it's used for the word martus is a derivative of that. And it means witness. Hotheos is God. He is the subject of this sentence. And when you see the phrase, "For God is my witness," it is an idiom. It's an idiom. We have idioms. You know what an idiom is? You say a phrase and it may not, the actual word means something different. Like, he's pushing up daisies. You ever heard that? Pushing up daisies? What does that mean? Does that mean somebody's laying in the ground, they're pushing up flowers from the underneath with their hands? What does it mean? He's passed away and buried in the ground. And it's an idiom that means they're under the soil. They've passed on. And so here we have an idiom. In the Greek, it reads Martus gar mu hotheos. And we have, "For God is my witness," but it's actually an idiom that just means I am telling the truth. So if you held up your hand and you said, "For God is my witness," or you could just lay your hand on the Bible and say, "I promise to tell the truth," right? So it's the same type of phrase. Paul is using this idiom to say that he is going to tell the truth. So what's coming up in the next phrase? "How greatly I long for you." Hos epi hotheo pantos. The word epipotheo is how greatly I long. Epipotheo. It means to long after, to wish for someone. So epipotheo, if you're sitting in jail, you got chains around your feet, and at one time you got to share Bible class with somebody, and you got to have fellowship, and you got to fellowship in the Word, and now you're not getting to do it. You get that? And now you're writing a letter to the ones that once got to share fellowship with. And he uses this word, epipopeo. It means to long after. All of you, or all of y'all. So I want to talk about epipopeo. And I have not fixed my PowerPoint yet. And now my marker has stopped working. I really got to stop working on my computer now. Point 1, epipopeo, is a verb of strong love. Category 3 type. What is category 1? Love is towards God. Category 2 love is right man, right woman. That's marriage type love. And category 3 love is friendship love. Or a rapport love, we call it sometimes. That means we get along. Isn't it funny? Our good friends, our best friends. See, I have pseudo friends. I have friends who love gears and metal and rubber, horsepower. But they're really pseudo friends because you know why? That friendship is only for Earth. It's only for Earth. That's our area of rapport. I can talk about gears with guys, and I can have a lot of rapport with them. But do you know who my true friends are? The ones who have the same list of norms and standards as I. In other words, you have a list of norms and standards in your soul called your conscience. We're going to look at it in a little while. And you, on that list of norms and standards, you have a number 1 position, a number 2 position, a number 3 position. And you know what my best friends, what their number 1 position is? Bible doctrine. BD, number 1. That's 1 on their scale of values. And we have a true friendship, a true rapport. Now, when I pass that person on the golden streets in heaven, and I look at them, and on their resurrection body, they're wearing the crown of life, the crown of righteousness, the crown of glory. And over their resurrection body, they've got a translucent robe of light. They're wearing the order of the morning star. And 10 million years from now, when I pass them on the golden streets of heaven, we're going to look at each other. We're not even going to have to say it, see? We're going to look at each other and we're going to say, Bible doctrine, number 1 on the list of norms and standards. Boom! You know where gears, hot rodding's going to be? Where that'll get you in eternity? Nothing. It's a false priority. It's a pseudo type of priority. And so we have here friendship love. It's for rapport of soul. And point number 1, Paul uses this verb of strong love. Point number 2, it's used here for capacity for love and the expression of that capacity. Paul has a true capacity for love. He uses the verb epipopeo to express that capacity in his soul. Now, Here's what you young people need to know. When you get ready to get married, you want your mate to be able to have a love, a true and a lasting love for you. In other words, when you meet a woman and you say to yourself, this may just be the one, or you meet a young man, this may just be the one. What you want out of them is them to be able to love you back. Love you back. And not just because you're so handsome. Okay? Not just because you've got big muscle, good tan, or whatever it is, a big shiny truck. You want them to be able to love you when you're burned all over your body. You want them to be able to love you when your legs have been blown off. When you're unrecognizable, when you've got cancer and you're dying, when you're old and you can't go to the bathroom by yourself. You see how that's different than puppy love? So what brings about that capacity? How can someone love you that much where it's not shallow? You know the answer. So that when you're looking for a right man or right woman, the first criteria needs to be, what's their attitude towards the Word of God? Now, when you develop, when you grow up spiritually and you have your priorities right and you start getting up there into maturity, your capacity to love someone, your capacity to love them, no matter what. I'm talking about thick or thin. I'm talking about no matter what condition they're in, healthy, unhealthy, down and out, or up. Your capacity grows so that it's no longer it no longer determines what they look like, what kind of that's no longer determination. You have such a deep capacity for that person that it never changes. Point 3, love expressed must have a target. In other words, if you're going to love, you've got to aim it somewhere. Paul aims his love right here, category 3, love, the believers at Philippi. And isn't it amazing that he had such a deep rapport with these people? And a lot of them are ex-military, ex-killers. These guys have been like the plague on the earth. They've killed more people than polio. And Paul has a rapport with them. You know why? Serving in the military is honorable. Teaches self-discipline, objectivity. And this is Paul's best congregation. Point 4, his love for them was based on their positive volition towards Bible doctrine. In other words, they had a list of norms and standards in their soul, and on the number one position was Bible doctrine. Point 5, a pastor's greatest joy is seeing his congregation respond to the truth. So I have to stop and blast some legalism here. I wish I was doing a pastor's conference right this time, because if you go to the Southern Baptist Convention, they have it every year. And you're going to get around a bunch of Baptist pastors, which I love the Baptist faith, don't get me wrong. If I was a Baptist pastor, I would teach right down the statement of faith. There's only one or two things they've gotten wrong and it could be easily resolved. But do you know what the first thing they do is? Well, how many conversions have you had this year? How many people did you get to walk the aisle? Do you see that? How many people did you get to walk the aisle? And you know how you get people to walk the aisle? You make them have an emotional experience during the service where they're convicted. They're convicted deep down. How many people did you baptize? And did you know these pastors are drawing their happiness from that? And do you know what happens when the numbers start going down? Oh, the number of people walking the aisle has gone down. The number of people getting baptized has gone down. The offering money's gone down. Our building projects have gone down. All the human good projects out here have gone down. It must be time for me to move on. Must be time for me to quit here and move on somewhere else, so that the average pastorate lasts about 2 to 3 years. Because they're watching numbers. And that's where they get their joy. Isn't that messed up? So where should a pastor be? So where would he be happy? What area should make him have joy in his soul? True joy. Seeing his congregation respond to the truth that he's teaching. You get that? I love it when somebody's light bulb goes on. That's just me as a pastor. That's my greatest joy, to see somebody hear the truth. And I can see it from up here. You can't see it. It's like somebody turned on a 100,000 candle watt spotlight inside their soul. And just boom, it just lights up on their face. And I see it from right out here. Now, you know why the colonel hated distractions in church? He hated people that would distract his congregation. Do you know why? Because you're standing here teaching and you see somebody, they're soaking up what you've got to say. And the spotlight is just about to come on in their soul. They're just about to have a breakthrough. And then somebody makes a distraction. And they lose their concentration and they go like this. The light never got to come on. It's so frustrating for a pastor to see that happen. It is so frustrating. So that you concentrate on the Word of God when it's being taught, and you try not to be a distraction to others, because they may just about to have a breakthrough. And you don't want to distract them in any way, because that's going to matter for eternity. You got that? And that's why when you hear the colonel on the tapes get so mad, he would kick people out of his church because he was trying to teach and the people in the pews were about to have a breakthrough, and then boom, a distraction would hit and tear down the whole thing. And so a pastor's greatest joy is seeing his congregation respond to the truth, his own teaching, and point number 6, through Paul's study. Paul studied. His capacity for love increased. And through their study of his teaching, their love increased. You see what happened? Paul studied here. His cup began to get deeper and deeper where he held love at. And the believers at Philippi, the more doctrine they studied, the more capacity they had. Any questions on that section? His next phrase is with the affection of Christ. If you have the King James Version, it says something about bowels. With the affection of Christ is umos in splagnos. Christoisus. The word for affection is actually the word splagnon. It comes from the word splagnon. And it means intestines. Isn't that amazing? Intestines. So how do we come up with the word affection? The word splagnon is used for emotion in the Bible. And that's point number one. A known portion of the body, that's splagnon, bowels, is used to describe an invisible portion of the soul. So what I want to do is points 2 through 6 is the essence of the soul. What is the soul? What is its makeup? Every human being has a soul. What are its parameters? What's its essence? And as we study the soul here, we're going to be able to see how Paul applies splagnon, emotion, to it. So in every person's soul, they have a self-consciousness. Self-consciousness. That means self-awareness. If you were to pinch yourself, you would feel that and you'd say, ouch. I feel that, therefore I am. You got that? There was a famous philosopher that came to the conclusion that he was alive because he thought. He said, I think, therefore I am. So self-awareness is a part of the soul. We know we exist. Sometimes you see a little baby, little bitty babies, they find their hand. You ever seen that happen? They stick that dude up there and it's like, wow. And they they move that thing around and they are just enamored with that hand. And they're going, oh. That baby has found himself. You got it? I can move that with what's going on up here. Self-awareness. So I think, therefore I am. That's the first aspect of the soul. The second aspect is the mentality. The mentality is where we think. We call it the two frontal lobes, the nous and the cardia. Tragically, Christians believe they throw this part away when they get born again. Just throw your brain out on the sidewalk when you go into church, and you substitute number 5. You get that? We don't want to think, we just want to emote. And you know what these Christians say when they leave church? I felt like that was a great service. I felt like it was great. Boy, that's a satanic trap. If you're using your feelings to dictate how the church service went, you're out of line. You're in emotional revolt. And so the mentality is the dictator of the soul. It is, I call him your drill sergeant. That's who you listen to, the drill sergeant. And the emotion is the appreciator of the soul. I'll go ahead and tell you that. Now, when you get these crossed up, you're in emotional revolt. You've displaced the authority of your soul, which is your mentality, and you've placed the emotion in the lead. It's supposed to be a responder, and now it's the aggressor, and you live your life by your feelings. That's called emotional revolt. And everybody wants to tell you how they feel about it instead of how they think about it. Point 4 here, volition. That's the decider of the soul. We need to be able to starve to death in America. We need to be able to starve to death in America. Volition will come back. You get that? The decider. You know how in the animal kingdom the smart ones live? How does a big buck get big, Preston? I'm going to use some bad grammar. He don't get killed. My son walked out through the woods just right out beside the house, and he picked up a giant shed off a huge buck. I've never seen a shed that big. It was huge. I mean, the base on that thing was, it had just massive growth. And he said, man, I'm going to kill that deer. And I said, Preston, you hunted all deer season. Did you ever see that deer? No. I said, what makes you think a year later, that deer's a year smarter than he was last year, that you're going to kill him next year? You're not. He's too smart. Only the strong survive. You get that? And that's how God perpetuates good genes in the animal kingdom. If you're weak and stupid as an animal, you die. And that's you as a human with your volition. You'll live or die by it. And that's what's wrong with socialism. It promotes weakness so that the weak are raised above the strong, so that my back has cartilage missing from grinding. But the person on welfare and whatever else government program they can get on still has all their cartilage, and they feel great. You get that? See how evil socialism is? That's why you vote conservative. Because of this right here, the part of your soul. Volition. And your conscience. That's your norms and standards. And this is where you get into idolatry. Because in your norms and standards, you place something above God and His Word. See, in first place, always has to be Bible doctrine. Once you take Bible doctrine off that number one position and insert something else right there, no matter how good it is, you're in idolatry. See, Bible doctrine is the very thinking of God. And if we're going to worship God, we need to think like God thinks. And the highest form of worship is not praise music. It is thinking divine viewpoint. And that's how we worship God. And that's when Jesus says, there is coming a day when worshipers will worship in spirit and in truth. So there are the facets of the soul. And Paul says, with the affection or with the emotion of Jesus Christ. Now, why does he use the word intestine? Because have you ever got butterflies in your stomach? That's an idiom. Butterflies in the stomach. It's an idiom that expresses that emotion that you felt. When you were around someone that you loved. Older people know it when you were younger and you were around that special person that made you have butterflies in your stomach. Some of you people, young people, haven't experienced that yet. But Paul says here, with the affection of Christ, I long after you. And so Paul uses this phrase to express his rapport, his compatibility, his love for the believers at Philippi. Now, here's my challenge for you young people. As we sign off for the evening, develop your priorities in your life. See, you're young. You need to get an education. That needs to be a high priority. Cody's learned this. He started a summer job. You'd be way better off if you go to college and get you some kind of education and you work in an office in the air conditioning. And then on the weekends, if you want to go get all hot and sweaty doing something, just go do it. So you can run a corporation during the week, and you say, "Oh, I'm going to go to the cattle ranch this weekend," and you can just go out there and just cut brush and do whatever, get all hot and sweaty if you want to, and you can enjoy it. And then you go back to work next week and make $1 million. You got it? Because you got an education. If you have the capacity to do so. There are some people that don't need to be in the corporate system. They need to be out in the ditch. I'm one of those people who's halfway in between. I just wasn't quite smart enough to do it white collar and had a little blue collar in me, and kind of both, a mix of both of them. So you need to put on your list of priorities an education of some sort, where you can place yourself at the top of your field, young people. You need to put on your list of standards keeping your body healthy. Paul says exercise is good. We need to keep our bodies healthy. You need to watch what you eat. You need to be healthy. But do you know what you need to check as number one on your list of priorities? And this is my challenge for you. Bible doctrine every day for the rest of your life. Number one. And if you can keep that number one, the rest of them will fall into place. Well, I thank you for your attention and